big questions for you too. Hey, we're live. This is episode, is it 84 already? 84, This Life in Tech. I'm Jason.
I'm Ken.
No, Dan, which we were just kind of going to get into is, at least in academia, there hasn't always been, although sometimes it pops up, this sense of what I'm working on, if it doesn't get finished at any cost, it's the end of the world, like the complete end of the world. So like, I don't really ever run into too many situations where I have to completely drop what I'm doing to go work on something else that is an emergency. Whereas look at Dan. Dan's not here because some work stuff came up, and I'm not criticizing that. It's interesting, though, how we perceive the importance of something, isn't it?
Or putting out a fire.
Right.
Like, is it really a fire? Does this really necessitate? Also, delegating helps too.
Well, I mean, so let's start here. We're not trauma surgeons working in an ER.
No. Which,
I mean, has an extreme cost to not being fast and making mistakes, which is death.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so if that's, an extreme example on that side, why do we seem to, as humans, take what we're doing and put it on a pedestal above all other things? It's a funny psychology.
But one of those is sleep. Hey, work hours. I worked 85 hours last week. Look at me.
Yeah. Particularly our culture in the West, particularly in the United States, as I understand it, wears it like a badge of honor. Like, hey, I've never called off sick, or I haven't taken a vacation in 4 years. Look how hard I work. And what's interesting to me too, man, is it seems like that's like a rank and file attitude.
Sure.
Not a leader or an executive attitude.
No, in fact, you don't see many CEOs, especially tech ones, which you think would be the ones to do that, would harp on, hey, I only get 4 hours of sleep. The only one that did was that Yahoo CEO that got essentially fired, Marissa. She always used to have that. But, it also could be in their genes too. I wish I could only sleep 3 or 4 hours a night and be refreshed. I would love that.
Well, okay, so take like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, who, whether you like them or not, I don't think there's any argument that they are, well, Steve Jobs was, hyper productive.
Sure.
But I think they were hyper productive and at a level of competence where talking about things like, it very much reminds me of the young party attitude, when you come back on Friday morning from going out Thursday night and binge drinking. I had 12 beers and 4 shots of this, and I smoked half a joint. Well, you know what I mean? Where it's like a laundry list of things you've done as if that's the accomplishment.
Sure. Yeah, and telling people how many hours you work, though, and you're not taking that time off. Talked to my mom yesterday. My brother never uses all his vacation time. He gets like 3 or 4 weeks every year at his company. Never uses it. And he doesn't even talk about it, but he always tells my mom, and I'm like, dude, you should take those hours. You work a lot. But he continues to not do it after 15 years. So I guess everybody's different. Some people are really good at compartmentalizing their work life and their home life. People can leave stuff at work. I'm not like that.
Well, I don't know that I am either. I mean, I don't ever really think of it as work, and it feels funny to refer to it as work because I don't look at it. I don't even look at it as a career. It's just something I wake up and I do, no different than breathing or showering or eating.
Sure.
I mean, it's just what I do. So I don't find myself ever really talking about it in some like disembodied sense of, oh, I worked this many hours. Look at me. Notice my senpai. Well, and I guess maybe that's it too, because I don't know that I ever feel like I need to be noticed by some arbitrary senpai, because I don't know that there is a senpai. Or if there is, I certainly don't give a shit.
But in academia, they measure us by how many papers we do in a calendar year, fall, spring semester. Now, that's something that people wear as a badge of honor. I know at my school, but I've only been at one school, but it may be different elsewhere, but that's the way we are at ours.
Well, it is actually kind of what I wanted to talk about today too, especially since it's just the two of us. Do you, not, I don't necessarily want to dig into the details of your contract, but at your institution, for you in your position, is there an expectation that you publish and attend conferences?
Okay, so no in the contract, but our dean, he asks us, I would like you to do minimum 2 papers per year. If those 2 papers to a conference, we will pay for everything. Now, the difference at Lipscomb is if I want to go to, let's say I want to go to Black Hat, but my paper doesn't get accepted, I have to pay for that trip. So, there's always the expectation, look, we'll always take care of you with a minimum if you do 2 papers per year. And that really just started this semester. In the past, you published 1 a year. If you didn't publish any, because you may have had a heavy caseload or class load, no one said a word. But now that we changed over, we're in some with Carnegie Mellon in some research number. We're like a R1 or an R2 school. I can't remember what it is, but now there's expectations of us to maintain that. So, I mean, what's like with Capital?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a Carnegie ranking, there's R1 through R4. 1 being the largest. Carnegie Mellon itself is an R1. R4 being the smallest. That's based on a number of things, including, most of all, the number of graduates you produce in certain verticals. Those are research degrees, so like a master's with a research thesis option and doctorates. Right. And then the amount of grant money you're bringing in. So, at Capital, there's really never a discussion about it, to be honest with you. I know recently they changed the undergraduate faculty's contracts because, well, I don't know what yours is like. The undergraduate contracts at Capital, I think, are more traditional in the sense that they're like 10-month contracts because you have the option to not teach in the summer, right?
Right.
There's 2 versions of that. There's a version where it's a 5 load, so it's 5 classes, 5 prep hours with no research requirements whatsoever. And then I think there's a version that's 3 with 3 prep hours plus research requirements. But I don't know what those are because my contract is completely different than everybody else's. I don't know that anybody has a contract like mine.
Well, Vanderbilt up the road, we have a friend who worked there, and that's exactly how it is at Capital. They have like 2 different levels. They have teaching professors.
That's right. Yes.
Which is no research required. And then they have the research, but those people are expected to bring in that grant money, produce the papers, speak at the conferences, build up the university. And the one person I knew was a teaching one. And that was his only job, was teaching those classes. So it's interesting to see that this is kind of the same all over, but we have a new president. When I started, he had been there for years. So this is my 9th year, and he has really been focusing on getting the faculty to produce papers and research to get that Lipscomb name out there.
Yeah, sure. Well, and it's also a way to recruit students, but Capital's in a weird growth stage. So it's hard to judge what it will be like potentially based on what it is like now, because what it is like now it's not even fair to really judge it, to be honest with you. It's not that it's in a bad state. It's just, it's in a state of, there's a strong intention to grow it, which isn't how it was before. Before the perception was, let's just kind of stay the way we are.
Sure.
Okay. But that's changing with, of course, a new administration, a new president, and the executives are changing and so forth and so on. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I've always done it because I wanted to do it, because it's always been something I wanted to do, and it's pleasurable for me. So yeah. I don't know. In some ways, maybe it's more of like a serious hobby, I guess, but it's also a profession in some rigorous sense. What's interesting to me too, and this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about, is I got a solicitation from an ACM conference, and in the solicitation it's a call for papers. It read submit now. It's a fairly well-known ACM conference. And what got to me was at the end it said, if your paper's accepted, we will waive part of the registration.
I've noticed that.
So, this has really started to bug me, man, as I dig more into Well, because I started a research institute at Capital a year ago, and I've been slowly trying to build it up, and I've been slowly getting donations and stuff like that. So I've had to delve into this whole world. And part of the mission of the institute is to host a conference. So I've also been trying to study, how do you actually build up a conference that people want to come to? And then how do you pay those people? Because it's so perverted, man, that, you take a really high impact journal. Well, you take like Wiley or take Elsevier. Dan and I were talking about this on Sunday, and their gross profit margin is like 73%.
That's because they don't do anything.
Well, 73%, man. That's their gross profit. So, dude, even with their overhead, it ain't like their profit is 2%. Their net profit. They don't have that much overhead. Because I've been a reviewer for Elsevier and Wiley journals, and you ain't getting paid. It's expected that you do that for free as service. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna be paid for my work, because my contract doesn't necessarily require me to publish. So it's not like that's built into my salary, right? And then if I want to go to a conference and speak because I want to disseminate what I've found, which is natural, right? Because it's pretty exciting, at least to me. And I want to find out if other people find it exciting too. That's the whole point of talking about it. You're not even going to let me in for free? Forget about paying me.
Right.
You're going to make me pay to attend, to give you the content that you're selling to other people.
Sure. Yeah, and that brings up a good question. If they're making that much gross profit, my question is, who in the hell is buying these papers?
Well, I mean, think about how much. I'm sure your library has access to.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot about that. They're making a boatload of money right there.
Yeah, man. Well, okay, so
that's true.
Having published in some of these and submitted to other ones, then you get two options as the author. Either you want to make it free for everybody, which means you have to pay like $3,000 as the author, or you don't pay that open access fee as the author, and the paper goes behind a paywall, and anybody who wants access to it has to pay like $50 minimum.
Yeah, it's such a racket.
Well, so why? Like, okay, I get it that market exists, but there's no pressure for me to publish in certain places, which, if you're at an R1, you're going to have that.
Right.
Probably even an R2. I don't know if you're an R4 and R3, anybody really gives a shit, to be honest with you. If I could, I would like to do my part and try to get Capital to be at least an R3. We produce enough students to do it.
I want to say we're an R2 or an R1. I just can't remember. That's a really good question.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not even ranked at all. Well, and here's why. We produce more than enough doctoral and master's students. We meet the requirements. We don't even come close to meeting the grant funding requirements. Why? Well, because we don't get grants. So this is kind of screwed up too. You have problems getting big NSF grants if you don't have a history of getting big NSF grants.
NSF grants.
So typically you try to get attached to a PI that has a known name in the NSF system so that you can like tag along, right? But Capital doesn't have anybody like that. So you have, the other thing I've been trying to do too is find ways to partner with other institutions, which is common. It's not uncommon at all.
Sure.
It's a game. A colleague and I last year submitted to NSF. And it was the rudest experience I've ever had in my life, man.
Really?
Yep. To the point where it makes me not even want to participate.
Well, I know that all the big schools keep getting the big NSF grants. Your MITs, your Carnegie Mellons, your Berkeleys. And at the same time, though, and they have the people there for that particular research, but the NSF keeps giving it to them over and over and over. I mean, before you know it, someone's got $5 million grants brought in over a 5-year period. That's $25 million.
And don't forget, the school takes their cut. Our F&A fees, I think, are 63%.
I think ours are 60. So, and you know what? I didn't have any family with 3 letters after their names, much less it was GED. And when I first came to Lipscomb, and they're like, yeah, when you get your first grant, this much will go there. And I'm like, what the heck? Are you serious?
That was my reaction too. Wait, it's still my reaction.
No idea. It's still my reaction too, because I don't see that what did the school do? I'm the one who wrote the grant. We have a grant writing department that will help you. But if I do all the work myself, why do I need to give all that money?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I understand that there is cost absorbed. Well, it depends on how the grant's written. So, the idea is under especially large grants that you're, as the PI, going to be working on that instead of, let's say, teaching a class. So
Sure.
that part of that F&A goes against your salary.
Yeah.
So that the school can pay an adjunct or whatever, right? Which is a whole nother conversation, adjuncts, man. Talk about modern slavery. Holy shit.
My mom wanted to ask, she asked me about that conversation 2 days ago. I said, Mom, that's like a sensitive topic in academia, man. They treat adjuncts like just crap. They just treat them terrible.
Horrible, man. Horrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to it. So I understand why some of that money needs to be allocated. I get it. But at least for me, it's like the least transparent process I've ever seen. Like, how does that actually work? And how do you bucket those into different GL codes within the accounting and stuff like that? It's so opaque, it's not even funny, man.
It's like you just hand the university half the check.
Yeah. Well,
here you go.
See, and then the thing too is you have to plan appropriately, because if the grant is capped, let's say at $500K, you ain't getting $500K worth of gear. You're going to get $500K minus 63%, because that's not on top of your $500K. That's the cap.
And that's what shocked me so much was the amount that was taken. But in our area, if you compare a grant for us where we use gear, I mean, granted, computing can be cheap and I can get a lot of stuff, but you compare that to someone in history, they can take the hit because all they do is travel and look at archive menus. But if I only have $200,000, I got to pay somebody, or that means I'm doing all the work myself.
Right, man.
And so it's a very shocking experience to hear that.
And then I just come back to this idea of, with all this said and done, all this money being passed back and forth, somebody more than likely is still going to have to pay to access that information.
And think about it. Capital's a private university. Lipscomb's a private. But if that money goes to Stanford or Berkeley, both public schools, that money was taxpayer money, and it's definitely being used for research to be put behind a paywall. I mean, it's even, in my opinion, worse than going to a private school.
Well, like, the grants that I'm successful with are the Department of Defense scholarship program grants.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's taxpayer money. That's money coming from the Office of Management and Budget.
Budget, yeah.
That is taxpayer money. So here's the other thing too that kills me is, so in that case, I think the public has a right to the information because they've at face value paid for it through taxes. But there's no infrastructure to actually disseminate it through, and that's how you get back to these publishers, because that's the only way to disseminate it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I can go to my local library and be like, hey, look, man, I'm a scholar in the area. Here's my personal library. Host this for me. You know what I mean?
Maybe that's an idea.
Well, so data archiving and data curation is a huge topic, and that's actually the grant that my partner and I at Capital had applied for. But the program manager was a leading scholar in that field. And listen, man, this was so bizarre. At first, I thought it was just me, like it was just strange. So I had my partner, who's female, respond to this person, and I thought maybe there was like something SJW like going on or whatever. No, the person was just blocking us. There's no other explanation for it. Because look, I don't know if you've ever talked to one of the NSF grant coordinators, but their function, because it's not a full-time job. I mean, this person is a professor at a university. Part of their job is to help you get the grant. So when I submit a package and you tell me that it's not a good fit, and I respond with, well, then what would it be a good fit for? Or in your mind, what's lacking such that it's not a good fit? And your response is, and I quote, just don't do this. Like,
really?
100%, dude. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I meant. It was like the rudest experience I've ever had, which is interesting because, like, if you go to some of the smaller conferences, there's almost always somebody from NSF there presenting on how to get grants because they want more people to submit. But when I submit and you tell me just don't do it as your like feedback, because remember, this isn't like a reviewer. This is the person attached to that vertical of research that is supposed to be helping people find grants and get them. Well, I mean, what am I supposed to do, man? Anyway.
That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
People are unbelievable.
Well, it's people. That's the thing, man. You know, so like there's this big push for open access publishing now in the truest sense, where it's just open. And, you know, there's a lot of issues with peer review. Even when it's blinded, there's issues with peer review. A story came out not too long ago of a person that publicly made their stance known that they essentially were going to reject any papers of a certain type from a certain group.
Really?
Well, yeah, man, look, man, it doesn't surprise me. People are people. But that's the problem, is people are going to people. I mean, so you know, to me, this is a perfect application of machine learning. Just let the systems judge it.
I love the open access. I preferred my next paper to do open access. Give them all the data, let them have at it.
Yeah, put your data sets on GitHub and publish the link.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that, man. So there's some big schools that have gotten huge grants to partner with their own libraries to build up these infrastructures.
Do you use Archive? You ever been on there?
The preprint?
Yeah, the preprint one.
Yeah, I published a paper this year on it.
Oh, you did?
Dude, it was the best experience I've ever had.
So you got feedback and all that?
There's two things this year I've done as an experiment that have shown me that the traditional publishing with these monolithic journals and conferences is dead wrong. Is preprint servers. I've gotten way more conversations from that than I have any paper ever. And then I've been doing this experiment where I write essays every week and publish them through Capital's website. And
I get the synthetic one?
And the privacy one, yeah.
Yeah.
And between Facebook and Twitter, I get way more responses through that stuff now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think my next one's going to be open, without a doubt. But see, here in Nashville, we're the healthcare capital of the United States. So my next paper's over healthcare breaches. I would love to find someone locally, like one of the companies we do business with that donates money to school, to donate a small amount of grant money to me to hire someone to go dig through them. Man, this Excel spreadsheet I got is just thousands of columns and rows.
Right.
I'm not looking forward to digging all through this. I wish I could just get an intern or something and pay them with that grant money. But, you know, local companies should be stepping up to the plate. You do something like that. If you live in a city that can do that.
Well, yeah, man. You know, and I think that's one of the things I was going to bring up if Dan was on was, you know, Dan has obviously a background in academia, even though he's not an academic by profession. So why aren't we partnering more, especially with small companies? Like, you know, not that his bank is small, but sure. It's not IBM. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they what I mean by that is they're small enough that they don't have their own internal research and development.
Sure.
But they
let us help you.
Right, but they obviously have technology.
Yeah. And they have money.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, and you know what? I have told my boss, I said, you know, let's take HCA, biggest corporation in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
If they gave me grant money, I would be happy to come speak anytime for a lunch and learn or just to their executive team about the research they just paid me for. And say, look, you know, here's here's what I'm looking at. Here's things that are affecting you, because my research is real world applicable. It's not theoretical. So using some past healthcare breaches, here's how you can fix some things for future ones. But I think one thing is it would help if I just asked. Be quite honest.
Right.
Use my resources. And I'm not asking for a lot of grant money. $1,000, $2,000, and that would be donated directly to the department rather than going through a grant. Then we wouldn't have to give up that money.
Yeah, well, and that's what I did through my research institute. Is so all those donations come straight into the research institute, and it's unrestricted funds. So it's not grants that get like an F&A applied to it.
Sure.
And then, I wrote up like an extensive protocol for, I don't know if you want to call it profit sharing or whatever, but intellectual property allocation is really what it's about. Because that's the next big thing, at least at Capital. There's a huge fight about intellectual property ownership.
See, at Lipscomb, what you research is yours. What you create is yours.
Yeah, well, look, man. I mean, the laws, as I understand them, not that I'm a lawyer, are pretty clear. Even the course material you create isn't a traditional work for hire. I mean, there's specific exemptions for academics.
Right.
But certainly research. I mean, there's like even at Cal Poly, at Cal State, there's an extensive protocol based on how much the university provided to you in the course of that research, what percentage of the intellectual property they own.
No. How do they even determine that?
It's pretty rigorous.
It is?
Yeah, it's actually really transparent. So I took my contract when I taught at Cal State and modified it, and that's what I used for my research institute.
Yeah.
Because look, I mean, most of the time, there's not, let's call it a significant contribution from the university. So, it's not common that the university is sharing ownership of the intellectual property. Sure. And an example would be, let's say that you developed a product and you wanted to get a patent for it, and you used the school's resources to secure a patent lawyer. It's a fairly expensive process. In that case, they would have a claim. And and rightfully so. They actually invested in the project.
Sure.
Right? But just using a room with a computer and some electricity?
No.
No. Because they get a side benefit out of it, which is eventually you can convert that into, like, for instance, enrollment. You can attract students that way.
Right.
If it's marketed correctly, it can attract people and increase the name and the brand, so to speak. But I don't know, man. There's different ways to look at it.
So take one thing. Our dean implemented last year. His wife works in biology, and she started this thing at Lipscomb called the Student Scholar Symposium. Yeah. Essentially, we have only students the students who do research on campus. All they do is submit their abstract. Everybody gets approved. Everybody has to do a presentation. So our dean said, hey, I will pay for you to have an RA up to 10 hours per week until that March timeframe next year, which is when we always have the symposium, to do this research. But it's got to be a freshman. And so that freshman's going to learn about research, how Wired, the spiel we always give, Wired.com is not a research publication.
Yeah, right.
And, so this is what a journal article is. This is what peer review means. And so they go through, last year we went through mine, and mine did the prison cell phone research and all of that. And I asked for an exception. I have him coming back again this year, and he's going to keep working on it. But, it's that Student Scholar Symposium gets us freshmen interested. And it helps them understand, there's more in a life than just being a programmer, or doing security work and things of that nature.
It can teach a wide variety of skills. And if nothing else, man, it's one of those undervalued things that you can put on a resume that can set you apart from the other tens of thousands of people applying for that same entry-level position.
Absolutely. I said, you guys do internships every summer. A lot of people are starting to catch on to that now. But when it says, hey, I ran and did a research project, and I told my student, I said, you got a consulting job at Deloitte this summer. And he told me in the interview, they asked me about my research project. I said, exactly. How many people are doing that kind of research while they're working full, or, going to classes full time? And I said, they want students who have branched out. They don't want the typical 4.0 student. They want people who have that experience. And that's what helped get him a job at Deloitte.
Yeah.
Was doing that outside work.
For sure, man. We had the same thing at Cal Poly. And it was actually rather cool the way they did it. There was like a campus-wide program, mm-hmm. and that was from all the majors, all the colleges. And then there was one just within the College of Business, which is where I was at. And that was all the majors within there. And then because at Cal State, the student clubs have an enormous power, man. Enormous power. And they're fucking huge.
Well, that school's huge, isn't it? I mean, in excess of 20,000.
Oh, in excess of 30.
30?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It's big. And so the student clubs, the two biggest on that campus were in the business school.
Like they are every campus.
Mm-hmm. And dude, they had an enormous amount of power. And their budgets as student clubs were big. Okay?
Yeah.
So they put on their own inside of all that. And it was essentially poster sessions. So, it's not a huge investment, but they were technical. They were peer reviewed by faculty and students.
Sure.
And there was prizes to win and stuff like that, man. It was fun. It's a great way to get involved.
Yeah. They have some local company sponsors an entrepreneurship contest on campus. And one of my students won a few years back, and they won like, $250 and started a little seed capital. And,
mm-hmm.
So those are the little things that we need to be doing to get these. And that's what gets other students. We put all of we have this glass case outside, and we put the name of the student in their abstract. So every time a parent comes by, they'll say, this is what our students are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's impressive.
And as parents, that's what we should care about. What is my kid actually going to get out of this?
Besides class.
It's more than a piece of paper that gets them an interview.
Yeah.
You want them to be trained to be better human beings.
Absolutely. And, they get that with the research. And you know what? And in our industry, we have a lot of introverted people. And, getting up in front of 200 people, 100 people, or 50 people for that matter they're sweating bullets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. They need to have that experience, because I say, look, even if you're IT, you're still going to have to talk to management for budgets and payroll issues, HR issues. I said, so you might as well get that out of your system now, so you don't look nervous then.
Well, you're never going to get away from needing to integrate socially.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. I mean, even I'm probably an extreme example because I almost exclusively work remote.
Yeah.
And I have for a long time, whether it's school or, when I'm working for Black Phone Sound Circle, whatever. But man, there's still days where you're like, dude, this is just way better to have like a Skype call. You're not going to get out of it. If nothing else, man, I got to go inside at some point and talk to my wife.
You got to have some of that human touch and relationship.
Well, yeah, man. I mean,
Well, look at Ted Kaczynski. Stayed out in that cab and went crazy.
Well, man.
Human contact.
The CIA.
I'm not laughing at you, Mr. Kaczynski, okay? Don't send me any packages. So.
Well, the CIA may have had a good part to do with that, man.
Yeah. No, that's true.
I mean,
that is true.
You want to talk about like true conspiracies?
That is.
That whole MK Ultra LSD experimentation.
Yeah. We should save that for another day.
Probably.
Because that's a good one.
That's a good one with Dan, too.
Yeah. Oh, he has a field day with that stuff. The things he posts on Twitter about politics, you totally know where he stands with everything.
That's one of the things I like about the guy. There's not a lot of like extraneous BS, which I appreciate because I really don't have a lot of tolerance for extraneous BS.
I know. You were my chair. So
well, there's just too much stuff to get done, man.
Yeah, I was telling my students the other day I'd gotten a paper in, and I said, look, I'm not calling anybody out in class because that's illegal. It's not going to do that person any good. But I said, I put a comment in there that if you put one more semicolon out of place, that there's a kitten that's going to die somewhere. And everybody started laughing. And I said, I put that in there because that's what my chair used to tell me, because I have an overabundance use of semicolons. I said, so when I put that in there, that's not to hurt your feelings. That's to make you laugh and realize, okay, now that I say that. So, we just do those things. I don't want to hurt your feelings.
No, man. It's and see, that's the part of undergrad. To me, the point of undergrad is to transition you from being a young, stupid person that knows nothing, into a young adult that knows slightly more, that is least prepared to go out into the world and conquer.
Sure.
And that's a hard transition for the average person, man.
Yeah.
Let alone if you have anything in your background that puts you out of the middle of that distribution. Bad family life, low education around you, socioeconomic issues. We all have issues.
Sure.
So even the average person, that's a tough transition for. And to me, that's what that community should help build up.
Yeah, I agree. And not all professors are like us, though.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately.
No. But not all people have that attitude, right? I mean,
that's true. And I have a lot of students that just don't care.
Sure. They're
but
not.
I have a couple that are like, I'm here for a reason. Sometimes it's always polar opposites. But, occasionally you just find a student who had no interest, and then you talk about something in class, and they're like, oh, man, that you could just see that just sparked it with them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think it's more common, at least in my experience, to have that, let's say, average student that is showing up. They're not going to be disruptive, but they're not quite sure why they're there, other than they have to take that class. Right. And if you can find that point of common ground and excite them about it, they'll actually engage and move towards the extreme positive, productive side. I've never really had too many, like, straight up, man, you should not be here, and it's criminal that we're taking your money. There's been a few, but I've never really had any bad disruption problems either.
I've never had disruption problems. And we have a program called Ideal. We have special needs kids, and they ask if they can be in your class. And every semester I've had one. I have one this semester who contributes to the conversation, and I'm like, hey, that's great. We get different perspectives from different people, and that's the whole point of going to college and learning some new things.
Yeah, that's right. Disagreement is necessary to make progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man, I mean, there's always that one thing where, like, hey, you know what, man, shut up, you're disrupting everybody. But I've only had to toss somebody out, I think, maybe a couple times.
I've never thrown anybody out. I had someone faint a couple of years ago watching a video. Yeah. That's something they don't ever prepare you for. Like, they'll say, okay, if there's an active shooter, you stay in the room, shut the door, lock it, call this number. A girl faints. I didn't want to pick her up. I didn't want to, in front of all these people, I didn't want to touch her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? And, found out that she had given blood that day, didn't eat the cookie and drink the OJ, and then came to class and then saw something. I was showing how they're injecting RFID into your wrist. And she saw it, stands up, goes, man, I don't feel so good.
Yeah, standing up to the wrong answer.
The wrong answer. I was like, come on, man. Don't ever do that again to me. So, well, man, I got to end this. I'm actually meeting someone. Hey, you're from California. You ever been to Shake Shack?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. They just opened up one here. They're really supposed to be really famous. But my friend, she and I are going today from work, and you have to stand in line for like 30 minutes for one of these.
That sounds like extraneous BS, man. What is a Shake Shack? A Shake Shack? Let me look this
You
up.
know, that reminds me of you because I would have to, if I invited you to this, you would have to actually put it on your schedule. I forgot how prioritizing. I always forget that occasionally that you're like that. Okay,
yeah,
from 10 to 10:15, Marsha can talk to me. Okay, that's it.
Shocks people sometimes that I'm like hyper organized. I guess I understand.
When I went to your website, I had no idea. I mean, I worked with you for almost 5 years as my chair, and then you showed that picture of your notebook scheduled. I was like, holy crap. I couldn't believe how like anal you are. That's the way I look at it.
Oh yeah, see, man. So
I mean, I know you work remote. It makes perfect sense.
Well, I just like being productive, man. I mean,
no, I get it.
What I don't like is wasting time figuring out what to do. That's a waste of time. I like knowing what I'm going to do when. Anyway, real quick to close this loop and we'll get out of here. The reason I've never heard of it is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in California, and I did not live close to any of them.
Oh, okay. That's why.
Yeah.
Well, apparently they opened up one right down the road from the university, so that's where we are headed today.
Well, have fun, man.
Hey, I'm going to Instagram my meal, okay? Make sure you follow me on Instagram.
No.
Exactly.
No.
That's exactly. I can't believe people post pictures of their food. That's a topic for another day about how social media screwed people. That's another conversation.
That actually, yeah, that's a good one, man. That is a good one.
That's my first week lecture in Future of Computing. Is how social life, technology has changed how we live. There's both good and bad.
Well, it'd be a fun debate. Last thing before we go too, I have some opportunities for research collaboration. We should talk offline. I'll email you. I need some student participants, and there's some new research that we might start working on that maybe you want to tag in on.
And I have one for you as well.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right, man. Have a good week.
All right.
I'll let you know if we're going to meet on Sunday, just in case you happen to want to wake up early and talk to us. If not, I'll see you next Thursday, my friend.
Sounds good, man. Talk to you later.
Later, everybody.
Awesome.